Welcome to Reimagining Chapel. My name is Amanda Esco, and I am the director of the Religious Education Program here at the First Unitarian Church of Salt Lake City. Thank you for joining us today. I'd like to start our Reimagining Chapel by lighting our chalice. Symbol of light, symbol of knowledge, symbol of warmth, symbol of freedom. We light this chalice as a symbol of our faith. Here we gather to celebrate hope and the infinite possibilities of love. As we begin in worship today, let's take 2 deep grounding breaths. If you are willing and able, I want you to stand up, please. Get these bodies moving. I want you to stand up and plant those toes into the ground. And I want you to take a deep breath in, and as you're breathing in, I want you to raise your hands wide and then bring them back down. Can we do this twice? We're going to breathe in through our nose and out through our mouth. Are you ready? Okay, let's breathe in. Let's do that one more time. Breathe, deep breath in. I like breathing with you, and I like being here with you. So, another tradition we have is to talk about what's coming up. And guess what we have on Monday, October 26th? We have our annual Halloween party. I am so excited to have this party with you. This party is something that we usually have every year. And this year we've come up with a new way for us to do it over Zoom. And I hope with a little extra magic. So join us on Monday, October 26th on Zoom for our Halloween party. Dress up, please. I'm going to be dressed up. I'm not telling you what it is yet, though. You'll just have to watch and see. All right. As we start off our worship, we are going to share our joys and concerns. I have a new you of the week, and then we're going to be listening to nature with our Wonder Box today. So, let's get started with joys and concerns. What's going well for you? What maybe isn't? This week, the weather has turned, and Miss Amanda is so excited. I love fall, and it is cold and crisp, and I got to wear my sweaters all the time now. So, what's going on for you? What's working well? What isn't? Talk to the people that love you the most, and I'll be right here waiting for you. Thank you for sharing your joys and concerns with the people that love you. Now, this week's Unitarian Universalist of the Week is someone who Miss Lissa and myself have gone back and forth about whether or not they were or would like to be considered a Unitarian. And I think you'll see why. We decided to include him because he is someone that is important to our faith long term, and that I think with this long view of history, he would be called a Unitarian. So, with that, our UU of the week, Henry David Thoreau. Henry David Thoreau, born David Henry Thoreau, was born on July 12, 1817 in Concord, Massachusetts. His parents were active in the community, and his mother in particular worked on several social causes, including founding the Concord Women's Anti-Slavery Society. His family attended the First Parish Church of Concord faithfully. When he was 10, the congregation split between the Trinitarians and the Unitarians. His mother, being a free-thinking person, chose to go with the Unitarians. The Thoreau family was not wealthy and could only afford to send one of their sons to college, and they chose David. Of the brothers, he was the more serious learner. In keeping with true Unitarian fashion, David went to Harvard. While he was there, he was a quiet student who had to take time off in order to earn money for tuition. David turned toward teaching. After graduation, he continued to be teaching, but had a hard time finding a job. It was common practice at the time to hit misbehaving students, but he refused the practice. Eventually, he and his brother took over the Concord Academy. During this time, David became close friends with the Unitarian minister and writer, Ralph Waldo Emerson, and even lived with his family for a time. They were part of the Transcendentalist Club. Emerson encouraged him to write, and David changed his name from David Henry to Henry David. Henry began to write and edit the Transcendentalist magazine, The Dial. During this time, while always loving nature, Henry decided he wanted to devote himself to living in solitude in nature. He built a cabin for himself on the shores of Walden Pond, on land owned by his friend Emerson. He lived in this self-made cabin in the woods for over 2 years, coming into town regularly, though, for supplies and to visit with family and friends. It should also be noted that his mother and sisters were frequent visitors to his cabin, bringing him food and clean clothes. While living in the woods, he did not pay taxes. Henry was against many things that the government was engaging in at the time, including a war with Mexico and slavery. He told the tax collector that he was not going to pay. Do you know what the tax collector did? He threw him in jail. Now, he was only in jail for a night because his aunt insisted on bailing him out. But from that night, he wrote one of his most famous lectures, Resistance to Civil Government. After his death, the lecture was retitled Civil Disobedience. Henry believed, like all of the Transcendentalists at the time, that there was a higher law than civil law, and that it was a person's duty to follow their conscience. Unjust laws exist. Shall we be content to pay them, or shall we endeavor to amend them and obey them until we have succeeded? Or shall we transgress them at once? When a law was unjust, Henry believed it was a person's responsibility to break the law. Henry continued to write and speak in the anti-slavery movement, and especially in opposition to the Fugitive Slave Act in 1851. Henry kept several journals, often writing about nature surrounding him by the pond. Now, this led him to writing 2 different books, Faith and Seed and Wild Fruits. Quote, I wish to speak a word for nature, for absolute freedom in wilderness as contrasted with a freedom and culture merely civil, to regard a man as an inhabitant or a part and parcel of nature, rather than a member of society. Henry is considered one of the first people to write about the environment in such a way. Throughout his life, Henry evaluated his relationship to the Unitarian Church. While he was raised Unitarian, as an adult, he said, "What in other men is religion is in me a love of nature." As often said in his writings, he found the divine not in a church pew, but in nature. As years have gone on, I would say several Unitarian Universalists would agree with him. In 1860, Henry developed a severe cold, which turned into bronchitis and then turned into tuberculosis. The last 2 years of his life were spent ill, surrounded by his friends and family in Concord, in his lifetime home. Henry David Thoreau died on May 6th in 1862. He is remembered as an activist, a writer, a poet, a spiritual seeker that inspires many UUs today. Have you ever listened to a cricket? It sounds a little bit like this. One thing most people wonder about crickets is why they chirp and how they make that noise. Only male crickets can chirp, and they achieve this by using their stridulatory organ, which is located on the tegmen or forewing. On each tegmen, the crickets have a vein that runs along it with serrations on its edge, making it look almost like a comb. And at the end of the tegmen, they also have a scraper. The cricket will move its wings onto each other and produce the noise, which goes through a harp, a part of the body that has a lot of membrane, which amplifies and resonates the volume of the sound, causing a chirp. Now, when we are listening deeply in the evening, we often hear crickets. It's one of the sounds of the summer night. Listening deeply to the sounds of nature makes us feel calm. Listening deeply can heal us from the busyness of our lives. When we are removed from the web of life, we can rest gently, knowing that we are interconnected with all of nature. I want us to listen for a minute about a very special recording of crickets. Musician and artist Jim Wilson first recorded this group of crickets performing in his backyard. Bonnie Jo Hunt, a Native American opera singer, tells a story about hearing these crickets for the very first time in an interview with NPR. She said, "I do a lot of traveling because of our nonprofit organization. We work with children on self-improvement. So I'm out on the reservation much of the time. And I had these messages saying that Robbie Robertson said to get in touch with him. Now, we went into the studio. He said, 'I want you to do whatever you feel like.' And now, here are the crickets." So I thought, oh my goodness, I'm going to accompany crickets? And when I heard them, I was so ashamed of myself. I was so humbled because I had not given them enough respect. Jim Wilson recorded these crickets in his own backyard, and he brought the recording into the studio and went ahead and lowered the pitch and lowered the pitch again and lowered the pitch another time. And they sounded exactly like a well-trained church choir to me. And not only that, but it sounded like they were singing in the 8-tone scale. And so what? They started low, and then there was something like I would call maybe in musical terms an interlude, and then another chorus part, and then an interval, and then another chorus. They kept going higher and higher. They were saying cricket words. I kept thinking, oh, I can almost understand them. It's a nice mellow tone. And they never went off pitch until one of the interludes where they went all crazy and they got back in again to where they started. Now, I know that people don't know what they're listening to, that they're listening to crickets unless they're told that that's what they're listening to. Bonnie Jo is right. Jim Wilson heard a choir in those crickets. He brought that still small voice together, transcending species. He listened deeply to nature. What could you hear by stepping outside on a quiet night? Tell me next time you see me. Thank you for joining us for Reimagining Chapel. To find out more information about the First Unitarian Church's work in the world, please visit us at slcuu.org. Until next time, though, let's heart out.
Each person is important to be Be kind in all you do. 3, help each other learn. 4, and search for what is true. 5, all people have a say.